So anyway, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Let's try that again. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, much better. Okay, welcome to number 2 lecture in the series honoring Ann Roberts, who is with us. Raise your hand, Ann. So you go. Come on. It's kind of an idea last year to have a lecture series named after Ann and in honor of Ann's good work with the Nashville Historical Foundation. I'm a board member. My name is Tim Henry. The board, our organization, I'm going to read you from the official, because sometimes people ask me what's the difference between that and Historic Nashville and the Preservation Group and all that good stuff. And I say, in partnership with the Metro Historical Commission, the Nashville Historical Foundation exists to, thank you, support historic preservation projects and community education through Nashville sites and other programs. Now, Nashville sites is one of our biggies. There's this marvelous program where, you can go online and everything and have these incredible tours explain to you about historic locations in Nashville. And we'll meet next week with Sandra Shelton. Sandra, you raise your hand. All of you can be back here next week. And thanks for coming. Thank you so much for coming. So, as you may have, if you were here last week, we had Dimitri Kaladimos talk about women in broadcasting, and it was absolutely fascinating because she actually talked about the history of television and WSM in Nashville, and it was just a wonderful overview. Well, tonight we have Jim Hoobler. Now, I've known Jim for many, many years, and one of the things we share is the love of somebody who's not with us anymore. His name is Senator Douglas Henry. Douglas Henry was a senator forever. He was involved with the Bicentennial Commission, and that's how I got to know him. And today I was with his main kind of person that worked with him, his assistant named Nancy Russell, who's at the State Museum. You may know her. Anyway, I was telling her that I'm going to introduce Jim Hoobler, and she immediately kind of perked up and said, Senator Henry just admired Jim Hoobler so much. So I'm going to do something, and I'm not making fun of Senator Henry, but I'm enjoying being with him because he had the most interesting accent and kind of mannerisms and stuff like this. And that Senator Douglas Henry's wife with Miss Lolly upstairs, they're looking down right now. They're happy with Jim Hoobler. Yes, Jim Hoobler. Oh my goodness, went to Georgia with Bachelor of Science. He goes to Vanderbilt and gets his Master's of Art. My Lord, his career as Archivist of the State Library and Archives, and then he was executive director of Tennessee Historical Commission. And then curator of the Tennessee State Capitol. And we strictly approved that, I think. Did you know him? But anyway, and then she's curator of art and architecture at the Tennessee State Museum. Now, Jim, my goodness gracious. See, this is what happens. This is what happens when you're, okay, so you go back. Get back. Okay. I'm not touching this. Back to Senator Henry. My goodness, Jim has written like 19 books. That's unbelievable. And my personal favorite, Miss Lawley and I talk about it several times, Gun, which is about the photography during the Civil War, in which which was the War of Northern Aggression. Right? Correct?
Senator Henry would not carry $5 bills because of who was on it.
That scoundrel. That okay, so he's written enormous articles, and back to Senator Henry. Participation in 11 worthy causes and boards. My goodness, Belmont Mansion, So Rugby Association, Nashville City Cemetery, that's near and dear to us. Maybe they'll put you there soon. Tennessee Association of Triathlon, Downtown Presbyterian Church, and that's most interesting because Jim wrote an article called Karnak on the Cumberland River. When I was in Egypt a couple of years ago, and I visited Karnak Temple, and so that's a fascinating topic there. And what you were talking about is Egyptian revival architecture with Tennessee, with William Stricker, right?
Yes.
And of course, what was so wonderful is Senator Douglas Henry and myself, my funeral was in that church a few years ago.
He was a lifetime member.
What?
He was a lifetime member.
Yeah, both wonderful men. But so welcome, Jim Hoobler.
We are going to take a gallop from 1808 till the 2020s, so 3 different centuries. And most of this is from the largest art collection in the state, the Tennessee State Museum. And let's begin. Women to begin with in Tennessee were not really allowed to be artists. They were practitioners of needlework. They did quilts, coverlets that they wove, but a unique little girl named Rebecca Chester in 1810 did a watercolor in Jonesboro, Tennessee that is the earliest datable artwork painting by anyone in Tennessee. So ladies, you got it. You started good. She did a painting of the Chester Inn on the main street in Jonesboro. It's still standing today.
Oh, geez.
So let's begin. Rebecca Foster made this quilt in 1808. And if you count the stars up there above the American Eagle and the symbol of the United States, you'll count 16. So you can tell who was the newest state at that point. We were, because Ohio hadn't come in quite yet. And at the bottom there in the cartouche, it has her name and the date, 1808. So this is one of the earliest datable quilts made in Tennessee. A recent acquisition is also pre-Civil War. This was made by Margaret Wood Dodge. She was John Wood Dodge's mother. And he was the best-known portrait miniature artist in Tennessee prior to the Civil War. He started out in New York City. He worked in Huntsville, Alabama for a time. He worked in a number of southern cities, but most of his career was in Nashville. And from the theme of this, look at the year, 1860, you can tell that he was an adamant patriot and advocate for keeping the country together. So his mother put this together with that in mind just 1 year before the outbreak of the American Civil War. He, following the Civil War, he bought a place up in the Cumberlands, and it was a fruit farm. And being a classicist, he named it Pomona. But this is a recent acquisition for the State Museum. This is a piece by Willie Betty Newman. How many of you are familiar with her? Anyone? A couple of you? At the age of 22, Willie Betty left Murfreesboro to study at the Art Academy in Cincinnati. And after 5 years of study there, she received a 3-year scholarship to travel to France and to attend the Académie Julienne, the only school in France that allowed women to study art. During the 1890s, she was judged worthy to enter the annual Paris Salon, and one of her pieces received an honorable mention at the Salon. Women being recognized for their skill, merit, and determination in that era was very rare. After 12 years of privation in Paris, she moved to Nashville in 1912. Here, too, women were not recognized for their talent, and she struggled. Some wealthy people, probably other women, recognized her talent, however, and made some sales slowly. She was able to sell paintings of colorful Breton peasants and, of course, portraits of local, well-heeled clients. In time, she opened the Newman School of Art in the Vauxhall building. That's where the Keith Alder building is now, on Broad. In there is a wonderful photograph of her posing before her portrait of Mrs. J.C. Bradford in her studio in Vauxhall Building. And that portrait is now in the Tennessee State Museum. This is another work that she did while she was in Nashville. Back up to this one. This is an interesting story. Do you see the name under there, the title of it, Nearing Where Journeys End? This is one of her Breton pieces, and that's a double entendre. It's an older lady with luggage. So two of her journeys are probably coming to an end, her life story and her travels. Back when I was working at the State Museum, I got a call from one of the legislative secretaries, Lillian, and her name around the staff and the members of the legislature was Sarge. And Sarge called and said, Jim, one of my constituents, she's the secretary, not the member, one of my constituents wants to know if you have a portrait of Selina Moore Holman. I said, we do, Lillian. She said, well, why isn't it out? Well, because it's dirty, it needs conservation. Well, why don't you clean it? Let me explain something, Lillian. The legislature gives us money to buy things, but there's no conservation fund. So if it's damaged, how do we pay for it? She said, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard of. How much money do you want? Well, I don't know. Let's start out with low and see if we get anything out of the boys. Let's ask for $25,000 as a recurring annual item in our budget. Get passed. And of course, Doug Henry was my sponsor at Cindy. So the next year I called Jerry Adams up at FNA and said, Jerry, is my $25,000 still in there? He said, I can't find it. That's so small that I don't even see it in there. Well, let's put it back in. I need my $25,000 back. The first one was in there, so we get $50,000 a year now. Because of this lady. Look at that dreadnought. She was the head of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. And young man, as long as I draw a breath, you'll never draw a drop of drink. Another one of the women artists of that period was Maina Trina Avent. She grew up in Tulip Grove, the house across the pike from the Hermitage. And she studied also at the Cincinnati Art School and followed that study at the Academy of Julienne. In 1891, she married Frank Avent, who later served as the State Railroad Commissioner. So she came from wealth and married into wealth. So she traveled to Paris on her own without the scholarship. She taught painting in Nashville and exhibited across the United States. She was noted for her portraits of African Americans, but was more prolific at still lifes and landscapes. She loved wheat fields and magnolia blossoms. She said that it was necessary to paint magnolias quickly as they tended to fade and it took too long otherwise, so do it very rapidly. The Tennessee State Museum has one of her wheat fields that had been owned by her niece, Ellen Stokes Moore Weems. Two small portraits of African Americans in a few of Cypress Gardens of Charleston, South Carolina. I obtained these donations from my friend, Mrs. Weems. Interestingly, Miss Ellen had been to the funerals of the two African Americans and knew exactly who they were, and one of them had been enslaved at Fairview, up there outside Gallatin. Ella, look at that middle name, Sophonisba Hergersteiner. It's a mouthful. And bless her heart, she never got married, so that was her name for the rest of her life. Born in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and a member of the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, Ella was the great-great-granddaughter of Charles Wilson Peale. And you all probably remember him as one of the first great American artists not to leave the country but to stay loyal during the War for Independence. And he painted portraits of a lot of our national patriots at that point. Peale thought that he had a very strong gene chip for art. And so, as a result of that, he named all of his sons Titian, Rubens, and Rembrandt Peale. His daughters were Sophonisba Agusola Peale and Angelica Kaufman Peale. And guess what? They all did get that gene chip. They all became artists. At the Pennsylvania Academy, she studied under William Merritt Chase and Celia Bow. She won prizes each year at the Academy and upon graduation was awarded the Crescent Prize for international travel and studies overseas for 3 years. In 1907, she was commissioned to do a portrait of Bishop Holland Gaptier of Vanderbilt. That brought her to Nashville, and she remained here the rest of her life. Her work is also in the Tennessee State Museum in multiple examples. This is a piece she did in a life study class at Pennsylvania Academy.
Then was the underpainting, is that part of the AV?
That's a reflection of me shooting it through glass and home. Several of these are from our. That's me, I'm in there too. I'm the one with clothes on. This is one of her Nashville portraits. This is a self-portrait, and one of my favorite parts of it, there's such glare on it, but right down here you can see the two glowing eyes and a little black cat. She quit a number of years ago, deaccessioned a number of their Tennessee pieces, and most of those wound up at the State Museum. So this is another piece from her collection there. Bertha Herbert Potter was trained at the Ringling School of Art in Sarasota, Florida. She exhibited in Manhattan a lot in the 1930s at the National Academy of Design and elsewhere, such as the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts and the Boston Art Club. She was noted for her portraits and genre studies of African Americans, such as this one. Between 1925 and 1935, she spoke many times across the state advocating for a state art museum. We still don't have one. She arranged for the Grand Central Art Gallery in New York to send an art exhibition to the Parthenon, and it stayed for 2 weeks and attracted 55,000 visitors. So we were hungry for art. Her work is in multiple examples at the State Museum. This is a piece that she designed in architecture. This is a staircase in her home in Balmead. And in the hand railing, you can see dogs chasing a fox in a fox hunt. And an interesting design example by an artist working in essentially sculpture. Sarah Brandon Craig Vaughn. She was born and grew up along the Columbia Pike south of Franklin. And Sally studied at the American Academy of Fine Arts in New York under John Sloan. She had attended Ward Belmont, so I claim her as a Nashville. Late in her life, she changed from doing academic style work to something like Grandma Moses' folk art style, and she began doing a large series of memory paintings of growing up on the Columbia Pike when it was a dirt road in the country leading out of Franklin south. And her family contacted the museum several years ago, and I worked with them on acquiring all of those works. One of which, though, her grandchildren specifically remembered, it was a total nude self-portrait that she hung in her home, and her grandchildren would have to look at it as they were Oops. But this is one of the pieces that we do exhibit, and this is a bird's eye view of 5 Points in Franklin in the 1920s. This one is hanging in the hallway at the State Museum. This is my great friend Sylvia Hobbs. She was born in Buffalo, New York, and she was an art teacher in public schools there. One year she was told that she needed to learn how to make ceramics. Just, the school board decided we're going to teach ceramics and you need to learn how to do that. So she was taught how to do that, and well, boy, did she learn. She became a very prolific and proficient artist in clay. She exhibited around the world, organized several international ceramic symposiums in Tennessee. She was also pushing boundaries, experimenting, and growing as an artist. I was asked by her to handle her studio contents after her death, and I told her that as a teacher, why don't we pay it forward? One of her students was Susan DeMay, and Susan was teaching ceramics at Vanderbilt and was setting up a ceramics program at Cumberland. And so we said, I love that idea. Let's do that when I'm gone. Give them my kiln, my wheels, some of my supplies. So that helped get Cumberland going. Many of her works are also in the Tennessee State Museum. This is one that I bought out of her estate sale, and check the base of it. It's 1970s Music City, USA. And this is when she was working in Sgraffito, but look at how she changed with the years. This is a series that she called Sporophores and Sporophylls. And this is like the shelf fungus you see growing on a log in the forest. And she started doing these. And look how thin those edges are. She was told by her teachers never roll the blade all the way out. She, ooh, what would happen if I did? So she did. She also got into trompe l'oeil, and this berry basket with eggs is one of her works. Some of her pieces are just incredible. She did one, it was an alligator hide violin case with a violin in it and sheet music, and the whole thing is ceramic. And when a friend of hers gave a piece to the National Ceramics Collection with the Smithsonian up at the Renwick, I don't think the curator did it, because he said mixed media on the label, and she was furious. It's a ceramic! Everything. You know, all those staples, those are ceramic. That word, it's ceramic. This is a piece she gave me. It's fortune cookies on a paper plate. And because it is ceramic, I keep it in a case. I don't want people breaking it. This is another one of her experiments in doing wall sculpture, three-dimensional wall sculpture. This is a piece that the Temple bought. We bought one for the State Museum, and I convinced the director of the Ogden Museum, the owner, Roger Ogden, to buy one for their collection down in New Orleans too. And Sylvia had this strange idea. She decided, I wonder if I could become my medium. Well, how do you do that?
Oh.
You are cremated, you have ash, and you can use ash as a glaze. So she approached Susan DeMay, her former student, and said, Susan, would you try that? And Susan said, that's the craziest damn thing I ever heard of. But if you want me to, I'll give it a shot. This was the first shot, these sake cups. And then she made an urn, 3 of them, and one, they were all 3 fired with some of Sylvia's ash. And we put the rest of the ash into one and sealed it. It's a permanent reliquary for Sylvia.
So,
This is by Bets Ramsey. Bets was another pal of mine. Bets just died about 2 weeks ago at 102. She was just getting ready to turn 103. And she was the queen of quilt making in Tennessee. She did books on it. She did lectures on it. She was born in Chattanooga and moved to Nashville late in life. In 1974, she became the founder and director of the Southern Quilt Symposium. She was inducted into the Quilters Hall of Fame in 2005 up in Paducah. She helped organize a Tennessee quilt exhibition at the State Museum, and she took a trip with me down to Chattanooga to pick up a collection of her friends' family quilts. And it was quilts and coverlets, and we must have gotten at least 30 out of that batch. We would do trips around periodically, picking up pieces for the fashion and textile collection at the State Museum. And again, she passed away about 2 weeks ago at 102 years of age. This is a piece at the State Museum called Appalachian Spring. And they shot this when it was on exhibit on a slant, so unfortunately that's the only photograph they had of it. But it's a vibrant, beautiful piece, trapunto, and beautiful applique work that that's put together. This is by Yanni Center. She was of Cherokee ancestry and descended from Confederate General Stan Watty. Yanni celebrated her native culture in her sculptures. Tennessee State Museum has 3 of them. I always like multiple spiders. And because one piece just can't possibly represent their whole body of work. She grew up in Skinham, Tennessee, and later moved to Nashville. She's self-taught, and this is Lynx Warrior. The Lynx Warrior was an older man of the Cherokee Nation who was tasked, if the settlement was being attacked, he would go to the women and children and help protect them from the people that were attacking their homes. And this is one of the 3 pieces that the museum's collection. Carol Mode is also in the museum collection. Carol and Bob Mode moved to Nashville in the mid-1970s for Bob to take a job at Vanderbilt in the art history department. Carol got her BFA in 1965 from Washington University. She studied printmaking and sculpture in the studios at Vanderbilt between 1981 and 82. And from 1989 to 94, she taught at Belmont University. In 1997, she was at the American Academy in Rome and has had several artist in residencies and was an 8-month exchange artist in Basel, Switzerland. She has multiple works in the collection of the State Museum. Stephanie Pogue. She was born in Shelby, North Carolina. She's African American, and raised in Elizabeth, New Jersey. She received her BA from Howard University and her MA from Cranbrook. From 1968 to 81, she taught at Fisk University and then moved to the University of Maryland and was again working with her former Fisk colleague, David Driscoll. From 1993 to 98, she chaired the art department there, and her work is also in the Tennessee State Museum. Jane Braddock. She earned her BFA in 1968 from Syracuse University. She worked for 15 years in New York as a textile designer for Braunschweig Fees, and wishing for a change, she moved here in 1981 with her friend John Beatty. Since then, she's been an abstract painter, and this was in the Art of Tennessee exhibition at the Christ. Barbara Bullock. Did all of you see her retrospective at the Frist recently?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Barbara was an old pal of mine. She was only about 4 years older than me, but she always treated me like her child. She didn't you need to take care of yourself. Barbara was raised in Buffalo, New York. She moved to Nashville and was trained as an artist at the George Peabody College in the late 1960s. However, she did not work on that really until she had a stroke in 1984. Then she took classes at the Watkins Institute in order to regain the use of both of her hands. She was no stranger to controversy as she engaged social themes in most of her works, as well as in her personal struggles. Her work is in the State Museum. I love this one. It's Babs on caffeine. Look at that hand. I need some more Joe. This is by Catherine Detweiler. Catherine was born in Nashville. She has worked here her entire life. She graduated from Vanderbilt University in 1968 and then continued her studies at the George Peabody College, the University of Tennessee, and Nashville State Community College. In 1992, she completed a 4-week master class with the late Nathan Oliveira at the Santa Fe Institute of Fine Arts in New Mexico. This is another one of Catherine's pieces. And again, sort of loosely abstract, but look at the flowers and things there at the bottom. Some representational work also. This is by another friend. This is Nan Jacobson. In 1970, Nan earned her BA in Fine Art Education from Pasadena College, and then her MLAS in Fine Art from Vanderbilt University. She moved to Nashville in 1987 to teach at Cheekwood and stayed there until 1990. From 1990 to 94, she was the Director of Education at Cheekwood. And in 1992, she was a teaching artist for the Tennessee Arts Commission. From 1994 to 1995, she was the Executive Director of Historic Travelers Rest. From 1995 to 2016, she was an independent artist working from Sparta, Tennessee. She's now in Fairview, Tennessee. Again, her works and her husband Russ's work are all well represented at the Tennessee State Museum. This is one of my favorite living artists, Virginia Derryberry. In 1973, she earned her BA in Art History from Vanderbilt University and her MA from there in 1976 in drawing and printmaking. In 1984, she earned an MFA from the University of Tennessee in drawing and painting. And from 1996 to 2015, she was professor of art at the University of North Carolina, Asheville, and the New York Academy of Art in 2016. Then back to UNC Asheville. She was a visiting artist at the American Academy of Rome in 2010 and again in 2016. And her work is in the Tennessee State Museum. Get the repeating thing here. Marilyn Murphy, she's another one of my buddies. Marilyn and Wayne are now living in New Zealand. for probably the next 3 years. Born in Tulsa, Oklahoma, she taught at the University of Oklahoma for the academic year 1979 to 1980. She then came to teach at Vanderbilt University for over 40 years. She's now living in New Zealand, as I just said. Her work is filled with references to the 1940s in a surreal time warp, and other times it is a reference to hanging out with her friends at such things as Mexican wrestling nights on the East Bank or science fiction. Her work's in the State Museum. She wanted me to point out that this is a Star Trek tricorder, and this is Sister Galactica, and she's being zapped by aliens, but she's also sending a rocket to get those aliens. This is one of her Mexican wrestling night pieces. It's a series of 8 prints she did. And this again, there's reflection in glass, but this is called Selective Memory. And I wanted this one for my personal collection because I purchased one from her that was called Night Wind over Tulsa for the State Museum collection. And there's this Art Deco gas station in Tulsa that has a dome on top of it. And she had seen a picture where on the Tokyo Stock Exchange, something big had happened, so the Japanese threw paper up in the air and it's all drifting around. So that's a reference in this one in Night Wind over Tulsa. It's sort of a dreamscape. You can see the wind blowing these pieces of paper over the gas station. But this is a made-up thing. She found references in different places in the world and put this together in sort of a surreal dreamscape. This is another one of her pieces. It's from her series called Dangerous Desserts, and she's being stalked by a giant meringue. This is by Carrie McGee. She was born in Cincinnati, moved to Los Angeles, then New York, and finally settled in Nashville. In one of those moves, she discovered that a leak had created interesting rust rings in multiple layers on something, and she thought, ooh, that's interesting. I wonder what I could do with that art-wise. And she began incorporating found objects and distressed objects into some of her pieces. And she has received a Visual Arts Fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Southern Arts Federation, as well as a residency fellowship in Basel, Switzerland. And again, her work is in the Tennessee State Museum. Lainey Gannon. Lainey earned her BFA at the Memphis College of Art and then studied woodworking at the Appalachian Center for Craft. She also taught at Belmont University for 18 years in the sculpture department that she started. In 1988, she received the National Endowment for the Arts Visual Artist Fellowship, and in 1994 was awarded the Tennessee Arts Commission Owens Corning Visual Arts Fellowship. Then in 2000, she received the Individual Artist Fellowship in Craft from the Tennessee Arts Commission. Her work is in the Tennessee State Museum, including her handmade illustration book for the story of her neighbor Ruby and her limberneck chicken. Alicia Henry. She was an artist who lived, worked, and taught in Nashville. She was an associate professor in the Language and Arts Department at Fisk University beginning in 1997. She was born in Chicago, studied at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, earning her BFA and her MFA from the School of Art at Yale University. She was awarded a fellowship at Skowhegan and from the Ford Foundation, as well as the Guggenheim grant. Her works dealt with the body and self-identity, and her work is in the Tennessee State Museum. Adrienne Outlaw. She's based in Tennessee, and her work is made from collected and found objects and is inspired by biotechnology. She studied at the University of the Art Institute of Chicago at Vanderbilt University. Her work has been featured in Art in America, Art Papers, World Sculpture, U.S. Art, Fiber Arts, and Number, an independent arts journal. Her work is in the Tennessee State Museum. Martha Christian, born in St. Louis and then earning her BFA at Syracuse University. She earned her MFA from Memphis College of Art. She's a member of the American Tapestry Alliance, and her works are abstract. She says that, quote, keeping the design interestingly balanced is my ongoing challenge in each tapestry. A love for tapestry. And hopefully I can convince our next textile director or curator to call one. Edie Manning. She grew up in Murfreesboro. Remember the Mannies built Oaklands down there? And graduated from the University of Georgia in 1968 with Bachelor of Liberal Arts in Social Work. Moving to Nashville, she studied with Anton Weiss and at Cheapwood and the Watkins Institute as well. She's an abstract expressionist and a member of the Tennessee Art League. Her works remind me of Hans Faulkner, whose work I love. I got to see a big exhibition of his work at UC Berkeley a couple of years ago. When he escaped the Nazis and came to America, he found a safe home. And at UC Berkeley, he bequeathed to them his entire collection of his life's work. So it was a massive exhibit, and I was very happy and lucky to get to see it. Nora Spinelli. She was born in the Dominican Republic and moved to Mexico and graduated from the University of Guadalajara. Her work is spiritually inspired, and she does spiritual channeling and classes. She worked in Nashville for a time, and Carlton Wilkerson was her gallerist here. She now lives in Sonoma, California. And our last one is Lenore Vanderkoy. She was born in Boston, and she took coursework in ceramics at Peabody College from 1972 to 1975, and has been a professional plotter since that time in Nashville. Her work is also, yes, William, at the Tennessee. That is our last artist. Now, I know I was supposed to leave time for you. Do you have questions, comments? How many artists that you love did I not include?
I've been a docent at the governor's mansion for 2 years more. And under the Haslam administration, there was a whole collection there at the mansion of folk art, of things, dolls, brooms, buckets, things like that were made along the Tennessee roadside.
Right.
And I know that there were some women in there that made some wonderful pieces of art.
The problem with that is this talk is Nashville.
Oh,
I worked with both Andrea Conte,
yeah.
Chrissy Haslam,
Right.
and then Mrs. Lee. And Andrea and I put together a big collection of art. I borrowed from the Brooks in Memphis, the Dixon in Memphis, the Clarksville Museum, Cheapwood, Vanderbilt, the Hunter Museum in Chattanooga, the Knoxville Museum of Art. And it was a fabulous collection representing the whole state.
it was great.
Andrea loved it. Chrissy loved it. One of the pieces was a piece that Bob Durham had done of his niece night diving. She's on the diving board getting ready to jump into the pool. And one of Governor Haslam's supporters said, "That offends everything I believe in." And I asked Chrissy, "What? Childhood?
Yeah.
Little girls? An uncle loving his niece? The state historian's granddaughter? What didn't she like?" And Chrissy said, "I have no problem with it, it's staying." So I love the Haslams and Bredesen Contes. They were great to them. When the Lees came in, they removed a lot of the art. Yes.
First time I met you, it's almost 40 years ago. I had dinner with Mary Donaldson Steve,
Yes.
and I was hoping you'd have some of her work displayed.
There was one I wanted of hers. There was a Donaldson house down near the river in East Nashville. And somebody was having an estate sale, and Mary Cooper did a portrait of all of these ladies that are kicking over things. And there's this larger African-American lady who was carrying away a girdle. And I was thinking, Mary Cooper, I wish you would let me have that, because who knows where it is. But yeah, Mary Cooper had grown up in Cleveland Hall, the old Donaldson house, across the pike from the Hermitage. Interestingly, when some of the descendants were getting ready to subdivide that plot a few years ago, there were a number of slave cabins in the back, and they wanted to know what to do with them. I said, well, one place you can put them is Felmead. They got slaves. So the cabin out there that they interpret slavery from is roughly. So thank you, Mary. Yeah.
Does the museum have any primary paintings that were longer or done locally?
Yes, the Chestnut Group. The museum asked them to do paintings of the Tennessee State Capitol building, and then there was a sale. We bought some of them, and legislative members, bought some of them, so that meant that the state didn't have to loan them art for their office, they owned their own. But yeah, we improved the Chestnut Group on that. Yeah, Kim.
Jim, you mentioned a good aspiration for a Tennessee art museum. Are you aware of any effort? And of course, there's also, I know, an effort with the Tennessee Crafts Museum. So, do you see that on the forefront?
I've talked to Ashley about that, and since, I worked on building this collection, I would hope it wouldn't be stripped from its birthplace. And there is land on the north side of the Tennessee State Museum going towards Jefferson Street where you could do an addition and do a Tennessee art gallery there. There are patrons in Nashville, I think, that would help fund that. As we found one that I mentioned earlier at the Red Rooms talk out at David Lust's gallery, talking about the carousel, trying to bring it out of storage at the State Museum and attach it to the Children's Education Center. The whole carousel's theme, and I worked with Trudy Bird and some of the people that birthed that project. The whole theme of it was Tennessee history. And I worked with them on coming up with specific figures that represented Tennessee history, and I wanted to make it multicultural, multi-ethnic. So, for example, I had Charlie Sung as one of the figures. Charlie Sung was a Shanghai businessman who was raised as a Methodist. So he came to America and studied at that Methodist university called Vanderbilt. And his daughters married Sun Yat-sen and Chiang Kai-shek. So that's quite a Tennessee and Nashville connection. Another one, we had Sequoia, the inventor of the syllabary for the Cherokee people. We had Rabbi Isidore Leventhal. We had African-American musicians. We had William Edmondson. We had Bell Kinney Scholes. We had Alicia. So it was an inclusive piece, and I would think it would be a shame to remove it from the museum, and it would be a great opportunity for children to have fun and learn about some of their history while riding on Tennessee.
I'm sure you're familiar with the Cohen building on the 4th Avenue block. And Ed Cohen had a great deal of input in the Cohen building that is still on
Peabody,
campus.
right. They lived right next door to what then was First Presbyterian, now the downtown Presbyterian Church. It's the Cohen building. Meyer Cohen had his jewelry store, pawn shop downstairs. They lived upstairs on the top 2 floors. A friend of mine, Kermit Stengel, owned the building. And back, I guess, in the 1990s, he called me and said, Jim, this has been corkscrew for years and all the windows are boarded up. So I had a drop cord and a light and was wandering around up there. And a stained glass window, the caning is slumped and it's in pieces on the floor. How can I get it put Humpty Dumpty back together again? So I hooked him up with Jeff Short of Cumberland Stained Glass. Jeff put it back together. And then when Kermit sold the building, he called and said, Jim, you want it for the museum? So it's there. But
She
yeah.
also left money for art to be for girls at Peabody.
When Etta was moving out of the Cohen building on on Church Street, Peabody won the competition between First Pres and Peabody for her estate. They got her to pay for the Cohen Gallery, which was an art gallery for the collection at Peabody. Peabody, some of you might not know, has the only part of the press collection in Nashville. It's in storage. Boo. But that whole thing was designed as an art gallery with skylights upstairs. Joby Wyatt turned it into an academic building. And one little space downstairs and the stairwell are the art gallery now. But it's really the only encyclopedic teaching collection in Nashville from the antique world to today. So hopefully, you know, Vanderbilt needs to learn that real universities have real art galleries. Look at Yale, Princeton, Harvard, Yale, Berkeley, maybe Nashville will get one someday. Yeah.
You showed the self-portrait just a little like that in the corner. I just got an email, I think from the National Gallery, I get one weekly, and they did an essay about Cecilia
Bow.
with a black cat and referred back to the other last painting with the black cat.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it was an interesting article, and then you mentioned that.
But she had her clothes on.
Yeah. So did the ones too, so.
Okay, all right. Someone else had a hand up, I thought. No, okay. Yeah, yeah, I'm back.
Can you talk about the struggle of what you display versus what you store? How does that discussion?
Most museums, you're lucky if you see between 2 and 4% of their collection at any one given time, because there simply isn't a building anywhere in the world large enough to hang everything or put it all on display. When the new museum was built, we had some hopes for it that we would get really quick rotation of the collection. There isn't enough staff to do that. So the exhibits that I put up when it opened, you know, over 10 years ago, were just now taken down.
Wow.
So hopefully someday there will be more funding for that, and maybe someday even a new wing to house more of the art collection, and maybe the carousel. Anybody else?
And one last thing.
Yeah.
I mentioned that Virginia Dairy show used the upstairs of my house as a studio at one time and did a portrait of me that I had.
Good job. I've got one of their little pieces. It's called Mars.
Well, you're gonna need to provide an image of that or his good collection. Hasn't this been wonderful? Let's give it a